Welcome to this first sort of deep dive-ish into the Mandalorian Season 2. I know I'm kind of like, we're at the midway point during Season 2 right now, and I'm just delivering this sort of content to you, but I feel like there isn't enough Mandalorian content out there right now, so somebody has to step up to the plate and deliver. So here I am. You've had my kind of quick reaction type review on the day of release, on the Friday for each episode, but now, on every Monday, after the episode just gone, I'm going to give you a little bit more of my thoughts, but really, more importantly, another human person's thoughts, another creator that I'm a fan of in this niche, this fandom. So really, you're off the hook. You don't just have to listen to me for the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, because I am joined today by Alden Diaz. Alden, greetings.
Well, hello there. Jamie, I think that this Mandalorian thing is going to catch on. You were saying there's not a lot out there. I think that slowly but surely, this small little show, people are going to start to engage.
We're starting something here. They just need a little push from the likes of me and also me with this YouTube channel, and you with your podcast as well. So I'm just assuming nobody's going to stick around to the end of this video, which would be the traditional point for me to say, Alden, tell everybody where they can find you. So let's get this out of the way now. Let's talk about your Star Wars podcast for a moment. Like, you do have a radio background in, I guess, the real radio world, if you like. But what it's all about for you is Ahch-To, which, of course, is the planet that Luke Skywalker is hermiting on. I don't think that's ever been mentioned in terms of, like, it's never been said. The planet's never been said in terms of its name. Do we really know the pronunciation? Have you given it its pronunciation?
Well, I really think that I have, and I'll tell you, a mutual friend of ours, Ken Knapsack, used to say Ahch-To, but because I have Ahch-To Radio, it has beaten him into submission to have to say it the way that I imagine that it would be said. So I believe it is Ahch-To, a planet that we really could take a lot of inspiration from right now in the age of quarantine and stuff, where Luke had it right. He was ahead of his time. Mark Hamill makes jokes now about, being quarantine champion and everything, and he really was. And it's a show that you've been on, that many people in our space have been on. I had you on when we were talking about Empire Strikes Door, your wonderful documentary. And I do Star Wars-based interviews. I've got Mandalorian reviews. We did a Halloween miniseries, other shows coming down the pipeline, and it's all about our wonderful fandom.
You mentioned the wonderful guests that you have, of course, yours truly, but there are other guests as well. Obviously, they can't all be as wonderful as yours truly, but you have some really interesting guests, and it seems weird to say out of the box sort of guests, but like, there's some that I do interviews on this channel, and there's some I've never even thought of, like your most recent episode. I haven't listened to it yet. I just saw it went on late last night in the UK at least. Someone involved with Lucasfilm, with The Mandalorian.
Yeah, we had Brian Mattias on, who's the senior concept designer for Lucasfilm. So he works like right underneath Doug Chiang, who of course has been around since the prequel era. And he's the one who designed Din Djarin, designed Greef and Cara Dune, and took Bo-Katan from animation to live action. And so he's one of the initial team members. And you'll hear in the episode, he talks about how he was on the group of creators that pitched a Boba Fett. They didn't know if it was a movie or a TV show, straight to Bob Iger. And then how, we hear a little bit about that journey of how it ended up being, no, you're not doing Boba Fett. You're making up your own Mandalorian. You're going to do a TV show. And they're like, oh, cool. That's never been done before. And he's a super cool guy. And he also, he teases some things in it. And it's really interesting to hear sort of that design perspective.
Yeah, well, this is in danger of becoming a deep dive into your podcast rather than The Mandalorian Season 2. So we will leave it there. But it is a great listen. So I will leave links to the various places they can find you and the podcast in the video description. So that will be there. So take a look into Ahch-To Radio, not Ahch-To, unless you're Ken Knapsack. But just keeping that Star Wars planet vibe going. I've just realised, like, you might be on Ahch-To, the green land of Ahch-To. I'm in Exegol, apparently. I've just realised how blue my background is looking at my little screen there.
You are. And
I am an
really,
Exegol.
Palpatine,
It
Jimmy
suits me.
Sangram, they're sort of the same.
Well, also, I am fairly pale anyway, but I am super pale with this lighting I've noticed as well. Anyway, now we're taking a deep dive into my vanity. So let's move on from your podcast, from my vanity, to The Mandalorian Season 2. Now, you've been covering this a lot on your podcast, and I've seen you've jumped on other podcasts as well. So you're well versed. You're well versed to talk about this. We're going to work our way to where we are in time at the moment, which is Chapter 12, The Siege. But let's just start with a little kind of fly through what came before in terms of Season 2. So Episode 1, Chapter 9, we had The Marshal, which was, I think we have slightly different views into what's filler and what's not. So I think we're going to talk about that a little bit. But for me, it was a big, quite literally explosive start at times. And I feel like from an action point of view, certainly set the tone for what's followed. Because the action has, in terms of perhaps the budget as well as the writing and the set pieces, it's gone up a few notches, hasn't it?
Yeah, I remember Favreau talking about how when you're doing the first season with this volume stagecraft, setup that they have, you got to spend some of your dollars on startup. But here it's like we already built the thing. And so they've been able to just throw everything on screen. And, they really flexed a little bit with that aspect ratio change in Chapter 9 and the Crate Dragon, where some of it just looked like it could have been out of the sequel trilogy or Rogue One. Like it looked very comparable and just massive.
Yeah, they do. Not that Season 1 was cheap looking or anything, but this season does, as you said, stand up to the films, doesn't it? Sort of visually.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of has that vibe of how many different things can we throw at the wall, where we already have had, a massive dragon that's been the biggest creature ever. We'll talk about, a water planet. We'll talk about, spiders. They've been able to show how this technology can work in every environment, every setting, every earth biome, whether it's desert, ocean, snow. Like they're really trying to put this thing through the paces. Like, what can the volume handle? How many things can we shove into these scripts? And it's been really fun.
Yeah, no, that volume is incredible, and it's bad news. I do some location videos on this channel. It's bad news for me because there's no on location scenes for The Mandalorian that have been shot and probably never will be shot now, but because the volume's working so well. But I guess the big question, the big takeaway from Chapter 9 is, do you think we'll see Boba again in The Mandalorian?
I think that if we do, it's going to be in the final chapter, and I think it'll be set up. Like I see Boba, possibly maybe doing his own thing, maybe being at most a recurring character in future seasons, but I don't think that we're going to get like Din Djarin versus Boba Fett. As cool as it would be, I think that Boba is going to be a very loosely seated element throughout.
Yeah. So you're more on the page that we're going to see him again in The Mandalorian, as opposed to what we've already seen of him in The Mandalorian is, I guess, a bridge to his own series.
Yeah, I think that we might get one or two more appearances here, but I do think that we're going to see him branch off into other realms like his own series, or if there is potential for other characters to get their own stuff. I think that these live action shows will probably dance around with each other a little bit, like have meet up and flirt a little bit here and there, maybe some crossovers. But I think that ultimately we're going to keep peppering in larger characters, some of which we will get to, and then reeling it back, to the father and son, always reeling it back. And
the Marshal, I would say, was definitely all killer, possibly filler. The passenger, however, in my opinion, IMO, definitely filler. Now, I know you have a different sort of philosophy on that. So, go on, shoot me down. Shoot me down, Alden. Shoot me down.
This is where friendships end. No, yeah. My thing with filler is that there is plot filler that happens. Like, does it matter that we discovered this planet that has the spiders and this, that, the other thing, and eggs and all that? Does that matter? Not necessarily. But character, I think, can be progressed even when the plot isn't. So this egg plot and the survive the spiders and fix the crest and get off this world, does that all drive the story forward? Not necessarily, but by the time you see it in the whole picture of the season, Baby Yoda has more of I'm sorry, the child. I don't want to offend Jon Favreau. I know John watches. I don't want him to get upset. But you see the child now have a greater appreciation for life, and you see Din become a better dad. So it's those things where I look at season 1 with 4, 5, and 6, those middle chapters, and how they didn't really matter. Why did this prisoner job really matter? Until we get to the passenger, and then all of a sudden the prisoner job did matter, because it has allowed Din to have some sort of standing with our heroes in the galaxy. So it's that kind of thing where I believe I have to turn off my targeting computer and just trust that it's going to matter.
So you're saying that for the sake of the child's education, I have to sit through half an hour of filler. That's what you're saying. It's all for the child's education. No, but there's a good point though, because when we saw the baby frog hatch, obviously the child then kind of understood what was going on here, and the child did not want to eat that frog. He wanted to play with the frog. So there is that kind of connection, I guess, to the passenger from the high res anyway. But no, I mean, I'm jesting a bit. I actually stopped using the word filler because I don't think that's fair, because I think you do have a point that more things are going to connect as the series goes on, and and the seasons beyond as well. I think I've just started saying side questy things, and that's
very
fair. That's fair, isn't it?
Yes.
But moving on to chapter 11 with the high res. Now, once again, when we get to Trask, the kind of fisherman's planet, and obviously the bow bomb is dropped, Bo-Katan arrives. He wants help finding the Jedi, but she needs help first. Now, at that moment, my heart kind of sunk a little bit, only a little bit, and I'm not saying the word filler emerged in my head either. But at that point, I was like, oh, here we go again. However, that was short-lived, that slight feeling of dismay, because then really I feel like we started to have, I guess, a bigger bridge laid down for where this series might potentially go.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a funny trend that's happening right now where poor Din Djarin can never just ask and receive. It's always a scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type situation, where at this point, he's like, he should just show up and just be like, hello, what do I have to do for you to get this information? He should just start leading with it, and then he'll be less disappointed.
And also, he used to get paid for these missions when he was a bona fide bounty hunter.
That's what I'm saying. Your child's hungry. He clearly doesn't eat much as he needs to. You should at least start saying, look, can you throw in some rations of food when I finish up helping you? But no, I think that obviously very excited if you're a Star Wars fan who chooses to dive into the animation. Bo-Katan was a massive reveal. Katie Sackhoff with just all the coolness and swagger in the world showing up. And it was cool to see sort of a fleshing out of what the Empire is like right now. They're a little unhinged, got some electric cyanide capsules. And, if we lose, we're just going to crash the ship. But also to see a little bit of how they see him sort of like a Puritan, like Amish. Like they're like, oh, no, he's one of those the way guys. Like he's a weirdo. And how that treats our main character, how it gets in his head. He's probably like, oh, what? I could have settled down with Beautiful Widow back in chapter 4 and then taken off my helmet and sip some tea. It's a sad time.
Yeah, but it's also a great setup for what might come, because it's clear that at some point, with the child or not, obviously there's going to be a lot of discovery, self-discovery, creed discovery, if you like, for Din. With the Mandalorian culture, and that's quite exciting. And I also think this still brings me onto something I wanted to ask you, because I'm sort of working my way through the Clone Wars. I'm catching up with the Clone Wars. Haven't moved on to Rebels yet. One thing at a time. I feel like I remember when I watched Solo for the first time at the cinema, and Maul popped up at the end. I knew he was, obviously, but I was really confused as to how he got there. Like, last time I saw him, he was definitely dead, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like that alienated people, casual fans. I am interested enough, obviously, to go off and do my research, watch an Alex Star Wars Explained video, to find out why Maul's there. I think I genuinely did that. But for some people, it's quite alienating. However, I feel with this, with Bo-Katan popping up, I feel like, now I know about Bo-Katan, but my brother, for example, doesn't. Like he's an old school original Star Wars fan, really only knows the movies. And he's not messaged me once and said, so who is that? And I don't understand why she showed up and what she's talking about, a Darksaber. I feel like all of these things that you're so familiar with, we're so familiar with, that are so important.
Right.
Now, maybe these casual fans don't realize how important they are, but at the same time, I don't think these sort of familiar details are too over-familiar, if you know what I mean. I don't think they're alien. I think they're handling it quite well.
I agree, and I think you touched on something there with the Maul example, which is perfect. And it's this idea that when you throw Maul into Solo, lots of people are going to remember being there in 99. They're going to remember like, oh, that's the one with Misa, Yusa, Jar Jar. Yeah, I remember that movie. I remember Red and Black guy. Okay, cool. But then they're going to think about this red and black horn demon and wonder, I thought he died. Bo-Katan not having appeared in live action so far allows you to have both of your brother might just be, this is a new character. And it lets us have our excitement. If your brother had seen Bo-Katan maybe in the prequels and then she disappeared or something, it's about, that setup and payoff. And here they just give you everything you need. In 2 seconds, I'm Bo-Katan. I'm the last of my line. This is what I want. These are my buddies. Let's go.
Yeah, and the same with Ahsoka. It's not going into Ahsoka's backstory, which obviously the more hardcore fans know all about. It's the Jedi, Ahsoka. She's the Jedi you're looking for. And that's simple for my simple brother to follow.
The simpleton.
However, I know you love the Clone Wars and Rebels, and you're fully up to date. Are you? I'm sure you're loving these. We can say cameos at the moment. I'm sure we'll be seeing these characters again. Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, perhaps more than once when it does happen. But is there a part of you that is, you're used to Din now? Although, sort of moving us on to The Siege was the episode, I think pretty much for the first time we spent significant time away from Din. He had almost the least screen time in that episode. Are you, is it part of you, thinking, look, we're into season 2 now. I've enjoyed the development of these characters. I'm invested into Din and his journey with the child. As much as I want to see these names and faces that I'm familiar with, into live action for the first time, to help advance the story, sure. But is there a danger for you that they could potentially overshadow Din?
I think that there is that danger, and it's a super fine line to walk. And I think that they've found the formula they need. They just need to stick with it. So your Cobb Vanth, your Bo-Katan, the way that they've been able to do that, Boba Fett for one shot at the end, if you continue with that spirit of what can Din learn and you always reel it back into Din, then that's sort of going to be the approach that I think is most effective. I do not want Ahsoka to all of a sudden have a 3-episode arc where she's like, my master, you've heard of Darth Vader. I don't need her to do the whole, let me give you a galactic history lesson as to why I'm a fan favorite character. But if by the end of it, Din leaves her planet, Corvus, the city of Caladan, all that stuff that Bo-Katan said, and he's learned something a little bit more about how to raise this kiddo, that's effective. What can he gain? But it cannot become the Avengers. You hear a lot about, oh, why isn't it more like Marvel? There's a really good reason why it's not more like Marvel, and it's because of stuff like this. I do not want it to be the Razor Crest is packed with familiar faces by the end of the season.
Yeah, I think they dealt with it well in season 1, although we're talking about new characters in season 1, but they kept sort of bringing them back in, but for me the right way, like with IG-11 and Quill, for example. And I think that's probably a trend that's going to continue. Like, I believe we will see Frog Lady again. We're going to keep seeing these characters again until they die, basically, like, poor old Quill.
We're going to get Pelimoto's entire life cycle every time he lands on Tatooine. Peli's a little grayer. But she's a great example of how to handle this, where It's Tatooine, so we see Pelly. If we ever go to Trask again, we'll check in on the little tadpole.
And it makes sense. It makes sense. They're all part of the family now. So we're up to date with this. We're on to the siege. So for me, again, it had that initial feeling of, when Grief and Kara need help, whilst the ship's being fixed. I kind of thought, look, if your ship's getting fixed anyway, you've got time to kill, so that's okay. We'll kill time with you and watch whatever this side questy thing is. But once again, this side questy thing just gave us so many more nudges into the direction that this series might go off into, certainly with Moff Gideon. And of course, Moff Gideon's eventually going to bring us back to Bo-Katan, you would presume, as well. What were your feelings towards the siege?
I thought the siege was one of the best action episodes we've had. Perhaps not as grand as like a Crate Dragon, but also with its own special moments. I mean, there's some of the best dog fighting at the end with the Razor Crest. There's a reverse trench run where instead you don't want the ships to win the trench run and getting out of that canyon. But it's those revelations you're talking about that are pushing the story along, where I almost love that the episode is aware of the fact that we thought it was going to be a side questy thing. Cara Dune has that line of, I thought you said this was a forward base. And Grief's like, I thought it was a forward base. Turns out it's a lab of massive importance. We get the line M count, which I think is Dave Filoni prodding Jon Favreau until he'll say metachlorians, and they compromised on M count. And suddenly it's like, oh, this is Star Wars by way of Frankenstein. It's a little Clone Wars-y, a little super science-y, and it's that weird side that Palpatine always kind of had of, I'm unnatural, I'm doing weirdo things, is all bubbling now to the forefront.
I feel like the child was glorious in this episode. And if you did have any kind of perhaps understandable anger towards Egggate, I think by now that's a distant memory. The child was just a fantastic performance. And I am talking about the puppet here as well as the jokes and what it adds to each episode. I feel they've it's definitely a new puppet, isn't it? Or they're adding more CGI onto the puppet, because it just seems to be moving better and more expressive than last season.
Yeah, it has to be what you're saying. Either some sort of upgrades or better integration of, like post-production effects, because he has these smiles and these teeth movements and everything that just feel right. And I'll tell you, I agree with you. I mean, this episode, he was just brought it. This little performer. Give this man the Emmy. He's 50 years old. He's at this point in his career. He has this wire scene with his dad where Din's very patiently trying to explain to him how to be a good mechanic. Switch the wires. Nope, they're oppositely charged. And I was so invested in that.
Yeah.
And then the soup, and then the school, and just we're watching him leave infancy into more of an elementary toddler type area in his life, and it's really adorable.
And you mentioned the lab and what that could mean. I think you uttered the name Palpatine. Do you think, or how? I mean, it seems now impossible for this not to at least be a connection to the process that led to Snoke and Palpatine's return. How connected do you think this is going to get?
I think it will be connected in as much as we'll know and we'll see maybe my bold prediction, Jamie, is that Moff Gideon will not win the events of the series. I think that he will lose eventually. And I think that maybe when he loses, someone takes his work and carries it forward for the Dark Lord Sheev. I don't think that this show will be like, by the way, Palpatine's on Exegol, everybody, we're gonna make it happen. But I think that Gideon has his own plans, and maybe he might be playing in to the larger plan as well, perhaps even unknowingly. My whole thing is that I think Gideon's trying to turn himself into a Vader type character.
Really?
He destroyed this culture.
You think he wants the blood, the M's, the M count? You think he wants it for himself?
I think so, because I think that he, acquiring the Darksaber and wiping out Mandalorians to get it, He's already gotten what he needs there in terms of weaponry. He clearly understands culture, understands the Force, but he can't use it, and he's going to try to force it, which I think is such a, haha, pun intended. I think it's such a George Lucas thing, like natural versus unnatural. Can he turn himself into this Force warrior? Because Palpatine and all these other Empire leaders left him. He's been chilling now in this, New Republic galaxy. He's a wounded animal, and I think that he's gonna try to turn himself into something greater.
You've got more of an expanded knowledge of Star Wars, and let's just say life in general than me. Has this surely this has been tried before, though?
In canon, not necessarily in this way. Legends had so much super science and Luke clones and Palpatine's son and all this weirdo stuff that happened in Legends, some of which is really good, some of which is But in canon, what we know is that after the Empire, the chosen few went off into space and were like basically, Hitler's guys after World War II, all disappearing to Argentina. But Gideon, not one of those chosen. He's still hanging out and running his little group, and he's got his big troopers at the end. What could those be? I think that he's going to try to make a play to make himself an emperor, and will, presumably he'll lose because we don't see him by the time of the sequels. But yeah, I think that he's got big weirdo science plans, and I promise you, Jamie, if I have to see that baby get kidnapped again, I'm going to be upset.
You've made some bold moves already in this discussion in terms of where you're putting your money. Where are you going to put your money on the fate of the child? Because it's not going to end well, is it?
There's always the Star Wars get out of jail free card of the unknown regions. Like,
well,
there's always
that, but that's going to confuse my brother, isn't it? So
it is.
And Dave and John are thinking about my simple brother, I'm sure.
I think so. And honestly, I think that in the long term, I'm not quite sure what they'll do, because you don't want him to end up at Luke Skywalker's school, because we know how that ends up for quite a few students. But I think when we look at the end of this season, I hate to say it, I think that we might get a really sad cliffhanger. Like, what if the final episode, he's in Imperial custody, and then they make us wait a year to find out? I mean, it could be really brutal.
I think you're right there. I think it will have to be a cliffhanger. We're not going to be saying goodbye to the child at the end of this season, because I don't think they ever expected the child to be this much of a success. And now the child is too successful and too much of a, dare I say, money spinner to get rid of at the end of this season. And we know the Mandalorian's definitely got a season 3. And I think Giancarlo Esposito even hinted towards a season 4 already, didn't he?
Yeah.
I might have just invented that. But, it seems too soon to sort of have a definitive ending. But I think you're right there. There is going to be some sort of cliffhanger involving the child, not just a Boba Fett prancing around in the background. This is going to be a real cliffhanger. I saw an interesting theory. I can't remember where I saw it, on someone's Twitter, that perhaps Bo-Katan will become quite important. And could this play into your theory of a cliffhanger involving the child, where she now obviously knows about the child,
right?
And if she learns that Gideon wants the child, would she or could she then try and trade the child for the Darksaber?
Oh no!
Nasty, but possible.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the fandom. Imagine the reaction of, we gave you this character we love, and all of a sudden she does something heinous to end the season. It could be really interesting, and there is that shot in The Heiress where she looks at the baby like, that's interesting. Like, she just has sort of I think I've seen one of those before back in the Clone Wars. It could be really interesting to see what she's willing to do, because she's on a war path. And Din very kindly is like, no, thank you. I don't want to join the team right now. I'll see you later. But that might not be a good enough answer for her.
Yeah, and there's, there could be a big decision there for her to make. But she's obviously not as emotionally invested in the child as Din. And then that's got to be a decision that's made at some point, whenever this ends. Let's be honest, Ahsoka's not going to be the final don't want to say resting place for the child. She's not gonna want that child. She's gonna be like me with my sort of nephews and nieces. I'm happy to have them for a couple of hours, but then it's back to you, Din. Okay, my sister's not called Din, but she's a bit dim. But that's obviously comes in the family. I've told you about my simple brother, my dim sister. Let's not get on to me. But I don't know. I just have a hope that perhaps Din's next kind of after Ahsoka, his next kind of quest for the child is to find the Yoda species, planet. He's kind of run out. He's exhausted the Jedi option or route. So I'm hoping eventually there's a decision for Din as to whether he sort of does leave the child, in wherever it may be, wherever this place might be, or actually, you and me, we're together now. We're together for life, and in that way, the child could have a happy future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that sort of is the simplest answer is usually the right one, where if by the end, why didn't the child play into galactic events? Why wasn't the child with Luke Skywalker and Rey by the time of the sequels? Well, because he was living with his father. Yeah. Like he's Mandalorian. He's a crewman. He's a ship mechanic.
Din's lived long enough to surely have worked out who the Jedi are and hasn't. So they can go through another however many years it would be without knowing anything about the Jedi. So, the child and Din could live life quite, blissfully, without the knowledge of the Jedi.
Or they could also just take rejection well. I mean, you talked about Ahsoka. And, in terms of being like this aunt that's like, no, thank you. I'm good. I'll take him for an hour or two. We'll see a movie. Ahsoka lived through the fall of the Jedi. She might see this little force wielding cutie pie and just say, this master student thing really didn't work out well the first time we did this. So I'm going to pass. We're not going to restart the Jedi right now. I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, well, we will see. Just finally, what would be... Oh, it's like asking someone, what's your favourite album or something, one of those annoying questions. But what's been your favourite chapter of Season 2 so far?
I've got to go with Bryce Dallas Howard's The Heiress. I thought that it was just everything that the show can be wrapped up in the tightest 35 minutes, so packed. The pacing this season's been great, by the way, and just the amount that they've been able to fit into short episodes, long episodes. It had Bo-Katan, it had the frog lady's baby being born, all these messages about life and the way. I thought that it was really indicative of what the show will end up being, where The Mandalorian, we thought that title was in reference to our lead character. It might just be about the concept. It might be like saying the Christian, and how many people around the world have different definitions of what that means. And I think that's really exciting. And the directors this season, like Bryce, have all been killing it. But I think that she was my favorite in terms of the episodes.
Marks out of 10 for Season 2 as a whole so far?
I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 so far.
That's a strong average score. All right. Well, Alden, thank you for joining me for this first ramble about whatever we've just rambled about. And in case anybody's still here, just remind us where we can find you, hear more of you with Ahch-To Radio.
Yeah, you can find Ahch-To Radio wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, all those things. AHCHTO Radio. You can find me personally on Twitter, Alden Diaz, at @AD_Strider, doing long threads about Star Wars and about the child and all those things. And in the comments of Jamie's videos as well, heaping praise upon the least simple Stangram family member.
Well, thank you, Alden. What a wonderful way to end this. And yes, Alden, you do pop up in the comments. And that reminds me as well to say, if you have stumbled across this video, if you're new to this channel, I deliver movie content, a lot of Star Wars content, but also other movie and TV related content as well, including the occasional bit of Mrs. Doubtfire content exclusively for Alden Diaz.
Hello! I love Mrs. Doubtfire content.
I know you do. I did one Mrs. Doubtfire video and I did it for you.
I appreciate that greatly.
All right. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. And Alden, thank you very much for joining me. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers, mate.